I was inspired to use the area between the sidewalk and my fence as a community garden after I viewed a TED Talk by Ron Finley. He's called the Guerrilla Gardener. He used his sidewalk area in South Central Los Angeles to provide fresh produce for his community because he lived in a food desert. My other source of inspiration was a little novel called Seed Folks by Paul Fleshman. Paul Fleshman has a connection to our community here on Monterey Bay. I believe he lived in Pacific Grove years ago. This novel is about a group of people from diverse backgrounds who came together to change a vacant lot into a vibrant community garden. And from working together in the garden, they developed deep friendships and a healthier community. Here's one of my favorite quotes by Ron Finley, pictured here. He said, "People need to realize how powerful the transformation of soil can be. We are the soil in our community." My garden is called Seed Folks. So the Sidewalk Community Garden is located at my home at 1602 Harding Street in Seaside. The plot size is about 300 square feet. It's 75 feet by about 4 feet. Our garden is a free produce and flowers producing sidewalk garden. Our first goal, year one, was to simply grow food, is to provide some type of fresh produce that our families could just pick and make a quick meal. The goal for year two was not only to provide fresh produce like collard greens, tomatoes, but also to teach the people who use the garden how to grow their own produce. So it's sort of like that adage, give a man a fish, the African-American proverb, give a man a fish, he eats for one day, teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Well, yeah, so the goal for year two was not only to produce fresh produce, but also to provide seedlings and teach people about growing their own food. The goal for year three last year was to start saving seeds and also to grow flowers, because in addition to feeding the body physically, because of COVID, I started thinking about the healing that would be necessary and social emotional needs. And so year two, I integrated flowers in addition to crops into the garden. A typical sidewalk community garden user, I have the 5 W's there: who, what, when, where, and why. A typical sidewalk community garden user is someone who's coming to the garden to harvest for a single meal that day, maybe to pick tomatoes or to pick collard greens or to get some herbs like we have mint growing, basil, cilantro. Also, we have things, because we have a houseless population that frequently visit our food pantry. We have a food pantry, a free little library that's also in that same little sidewalk space that's devoted to the community garden. So I try to make sure that there are things that pick and eat plants like blackberries or sugar snap peas or tomatoes for our houseless population that may not have a way to cook the produce, but they can always pick and eat. We also grow some type of greens, kales. I have quite a few visitors who make green smoothies. So I have kales and collards and lettuce growing as well. And as I said earlier, I introduced flowers. So now we have sweet peas growing, we have daisies, we have sunflowers, and I try to make some type of, have some type of flowers available that provide fragrance. When I'm selecting plants for the garden, I also think about the growth pattern of the plant and the phase that it's in. For instance, borage, when it grows, it takes over. And so if I'm going to put that in the garden, I have to make sure that I put it in an area where I can plant other things close by and they'll be compatible. Also, because I'm at the corner lot, one year I grew sunflowers there, and my neighbor said, you know, when she's trying to exit our street and turn, it's hard for her to see over the sunflowers. So now I don't place the sunflowers at the corner. I do still have sunflowers in the community garden, but I place them at the other end of the garden so that they do not interfere with anyone's ability to see traffic. I also think about the soil condition when I'm selecting the plants, right? And maintenance. How much care is this plant going to require? Is it a low maintenance plant where I can just water every other day? Or is it a plant that's going to require constant water and fertilizing and other type of needs? If it's high maintenance, because I'm still working full-time as a teacher, and so my garden has to be something that can also be compatible with the other things that I have going on in my life. I try to devote at least 3 hours a week to maintaining the garden. So I need plants that have a low maintenance, but also plants that are going to be compatible with other plants in the garden. Because I have 300 square feet, I try to get like the most bang for my time and my efforts. And what can really, I select plants that can really be useful in the community and that people want. I try to select plants that have a multicultural connection or background, because my neighborhood is very diverse. And I want to select plants that also are a little bit unusual, so that when people stop by, they can start talking about, well, how do you prepare this plant? And that has happened so many times where conversations have started between neighbors about the plants, right? Yes. And another factor in selecting the plants, the season and our weather. I'm trying to grow okra now, but okra requires a lot of heat. I'd love to grow it, but I don't know if we'll have enough heat for the okra to really be successful. So that's another factor. In our seasons, you know, I try to grow collards in the fall because the collards taste a little sweeter when they have a bit of frost. But collards is one thing, because where I live in Seaside, the temperatures are about average, you know, it's not too hot, not too cool. So collards tend to thrive in my area in the sidewalk garden all year long. So I can grow collards all year long. The flavor, however, is better after a little frost. Also, I thought about how much would this produce cost in the store as opposed to growing it in the garden. So 2 crops that I grow in the garden continuously squash. In the store, zucchini now is so expensive. So I always try to grow zucchini or some type of a veggie in the that family so that people can cut the one zucchini, have it with some rice, you have a meal, right? I did grow pumpkins in the community garden, but pumpkins, I did not get enough from the pumpkins in order for it to justify being in the garden, because the pumpkins, first, the space. Pumpkins require a lot of space, and as soon as I would have a little pumpkin, someone would pick it, and then that would be it. So I have to choose plants that will give me the most bang for the most number of people for the longest length of time. So if I had to choose between growing pumpkins and growing zucchini, I would have to choose zucchini because they're continuous. I have my own front garden and I have lemon trees. So I always try to provide lemons. I'll put them on top of in the picture here, this is the food pantry where there's canned goods. And so on top of the food pantry, I try at least once a month, a tray of lemons, or sometimes there's flowers here or berries. I try to start everything, all the plants, I would say 80%, I start from seeds. And so I'm constantly starting seeds all year round. And I try to think ahead. I keep a calendar. And in this calendar, like now I have 82 different things growing. So I will write down the name of the plant and I'll do it by numbers. When I started the plant, when it bloomed, when it's ready to harvest, and I'll take a regular calendar and I'll count back from the number of days to harvest. And then I'll also write in here when I need to start new seedlings. Every year in the garden, I have a focal plant. And 2 factors. Is it prolific? Will it feed a lot of people? And will it feed a lot of people continuously? And can I save seeds from it? And do I need to do succession planning? So the focal plant this year is collards. So right now, I have about 17 different types of collards that I'm going to plant. Currently, I have 4 different types growing. Well, actually, I may have 5. I have Georgia collards, Tabitha Dykes, I have Jergensen's yellow, I have old timey, and I have Ellen Felton. And then as the season continues, I'll add more different types of collards to the garden. So this year, the garden's focal plant is collards. I participated in the heirloom collards trials that are going on. Yes. Have a relationship with the community garden. I'm constantly taking notes in my journal. I'm looking at when things bloom, the health of the plants, the space, the amount of space that's required for every single plant. I have a map that I draw at the beginning of the year about, this is like my vision board, where I want things to be. what time of the season I want things to bloom, so that there's always some food growing in the garden at all times. I think about the budget, how much I reserve some money every single month for the Sidewalk Community Garden as part of my giving back. And so sometimes I use the funds for fertilizer. Sometimes I buy seeds. Sometimes if there's a plant sale and there's something that I need and I don't have the plant available, but it's that time of the season to put the plant in the ground, I might go and buy it. But if at all possible, I start everything from seeds because I want to control what's going into that seed. And I try to start everything from seeds, completely organic. I do vermicomposting. I do not use commercial fertilizers in my garden. And I do have, every now and then, I have volunteers who help weed the garden. I have helpers that I sometimes pay to help me weed the garden, big projects where I need a lot of strength. I will pay a former student to help me in the garden. And that's an opportunity to give the student, a little side job and pride in doing a job well done. Mother's Day, we made bouquets with flowers from the garden, and I put them on top of the food pantry. I used like the little bitty glasses, wine glasses. And so then people can just grab a little bouquet and continue walking. People also can pick any of the flowers from the community garden. But sometimes people are on their way to work and they don't have time or they don't have the tools to pick the flowers. So for special holidays, or just every now and then, just because I feel like maybe we need a little pick-me-up, I will pick flowers and actually make the bouquets and put them on top of the food pantry. And here's my granddaughter taking a bouquet to a senior person who is homebound this Mother's Day. And so, yeah. So we're trying to feed the body and feed the heart too, the soul too, right? Making the community happier, mentally happier. All right, here's my call to action for you. Maybe you don't have space to grow a sidewalk community garden, but you can plant a row and dedicate that row to the hungry, and then donate the produce to maybe your local food bank, or if they're not taking fresh produce, maybe a neighbor or family or a senior who would appreciate and love to have fresh produce, organic, homegrown produce or flowers. And if you can't find any place in your community to donate your produce to or your flowers, I'm always taking donations of fresh produce. It's so expensive in stores, and it serves such a need in my community. Here's one community garden user. She has been coming to the sidewalk garden since the very beginning, picking collards and things, not just for herself, but for others too. And I asked her during one of her visits if I could videotape her, and she consented. So now I'll let her tell you about the Sidewalk Community Garden.
Hi, this is Jackie, and I'm just so blessed to be here picking greens at this beautiful sister's home. We need to make this a citywide event where everybody plants something that somebody can get. I have fruit trees People come to my home and do you want plums? I got, oh God, I'll bring you some plums.
I love plums.
I got yellow plums and purple plums, and I got a tree that leans, but it has lemons on it. I have a little dwarf apple tree, and my neighbors and I share, and this is what it's all about. This is how old Seaside was, about sharing and giving and loving and embracing, and we have to get back to that. In the name of Jesus.
Yes.
All right.
And you say your nephew likes the little free
my
library?
nephew, Elias Miller, was visiting me, and I was taking him to the airport. He saw the little book rack here on the side and was going crazy to make me stop because he wanted to look at the books. He's 5 and he loves to read. I went to a garage sale and got him a book about the human body, and now he's saying he wants to be a pediatrician. Ain't that something?
Thank you, Sister Jackie.
Just the other day when I was out, here's the sweet peas growing and the calendula. I was out in the garden and I was watering. I water everything by hand. And this gentleman, an elderly gentleman, walked by. He was on the other side of the street and he crossed over and he pointed to the sweet peas and he said, "What are these?" And I said, "They're sweet peas." And then he said, "Do you eat them?" I said, "No, these are not like sugar snaps. These are for the fragrance." And he smelled it and he said, "It reminds me of my grandma." And his eyes got misty. And he said, "My grandma's powder." And so I said, "You are welcome to come and pick some whenever you like." And he held the sweet pea up to his nose as he walked. As he continued on his daily walk. That's the power of flowers. Yeah, it didn't physically feed him, his body, but it fed his soul. It fed him emotionally. And after COVID, there's so much healing that we need. And for him to smell that sweet pea and think about his grandma, and think about her powder, that made my heart just feel full. And that's the power of gardening.